part 2. So we're going to get into dynamic subdivision a bit and kind of add the second level of detail here on our shield prop. Still using basically the same functionality in ZModeler, not getting too fancy, but what we are adding in is this dynamic subdivision. You can activate that by hitting D by default. It'll bring up this little dynamic subdiv menu or pop-up. Hit always yes, and then you'll see, hit solo, that your mesh does this crazy thing. In order to get it to hold its shape, I'm going to need to come over here to an edge, click on crease, edge loop complete, and then tap on the edge again, and this edge is now creased. Got to do that for this one, back here, and then these two on the inside as well. So now when we hit D, you'll notice that we have what kind of looks like a wheel or a donut or a bagel. So now what this is doing is simulating what your mesh is going to look like with more subdivisions. So that's why we get kind of more rounded edges, and why we need to add geometry in certain places in order to hold those edges, make it deform the way that we want to. So we're going to do the exact same thing on the outer metal bit here. So crease outside and inside, hit D. We have our metal done. Come here to the center bit, hit D. It's going to go a little crazy. That's okay. And feel free, in fact it's really useful to kind of shift back and forth between the polyfill or polyframe and preview, just gray mesh mode when you're doing the dynamic subdivision. So you do that by just tapping Shift F. So Shift F, Shift D, and D to turn your previews on and off. I'm going to show off another little function in Dynamics called thickness, and that does exactly what it sounds like. So you don't have to do this part, but just to show it off, I'm going to go ahead and highlight just this green top poly group, hit split hidden, or delete hidden rather. So we have just this one showing here. And then when I hit dynamic, we'll get this again. That's okay. We're going to come down to under the geometry dynamic subdiv menu. You'll see that your activate dynamic subdiv is clicked on. You'll have a thickness slider here. Drag it up until you have the thickness that you had before roughly. Just go a little bit more, make sure that it's intersecting with the mesh the way that I want it to, which sure mostly is, kind of, I guess, yeah. And then we'll put in control loop. And the reason why I want to do this is because when I go to add the thickness again and apply the dynamic subdivision, the geometry is going to be the same on the front as it is on the back. The other way, I would have had to, this isn't a big deal, this is just kind of best practices. If I were to do it the other way, I would have had to add an edge loop here, control loop here, and then go on the back and try to add in the exact same edge loop on that back face, which this is just lets you not worry about that so much. So we're just going to add 2 here, and then I'm just assuming like 1, I don't know, right there or so. So hit D again, preview that, see if we're getting the right effect. Cool. So coming over here to the back side, I'm going to tap on our handle, hit Shift F, and then D. Now sometimes be sure to check your thickness slider, because sometimes if you're working with thickness, you duplicate a tool, and then you start working on that without looking at the dynamic subdiv You get the geometry exactly the way you want. You turn dynamic subdiv on, forget that you had thickness on, your mesh is going to look wonky. So just check that thickness slider, make sure it's at 0 when you swap subtools. If not, just drag it back down to 0 and everything's fine. Don't panic. Everything's going to be okay. Okay. So this one, all we got to do, I think, is Shift-D. We're just going to add a edge loop there, and an edge loop there. Hit D again. Another thing we could do, since that looks kind of tapered, you can slide these control loops around a bit to get the shape that you want. So hover over an edge, tap spacebar, come over to slide, and then slide, and then edge loop complete, and then just drag it back or forward if you want it to be a little bit sharper of an edge. But I don't know, I think there's probably better. That probably looks exactly the same, but now you know about slide. So, a little thick probably. Let's come over, Shift-D, tap W, and we're just gonna squish it. Just squish it. Just a little bit of squish. Match it up with the inner wood bit again. Just reattach it. And then I kind of want to drag it in just a bit too. Don't want it overlapping that ring so much. So that's kind of our second level of detail almost wrapped up. Before we do that, let's add these bolts in. I told you I wasn't going to forget these. And look, I haven't. Let's go ahead and scale it down. Oop. Scale it down. Then drag it over here. Can't really see it, but there we go. Okay. Just kind of match it up like that, and then we can make it super long here, just so it punches all the way through. Let's go Shift F, solo, and I'm going to go ahead and bevel these edges here. So we can come up to transform, activate symmetry. Let's try Y. Yeah. And did I say bevel? I meant let's just insert a control loop here on either side here. And one more. Now hit D to preview. Shift D. All the way through. D one more time. Shift F. I want it to be, you know, kind of rounded, not super sharp. So there we go. Great, we have our bolt. Now we need more bolts. Let's hit W, go to World Center, then I'm going to go my quick menu, then mirror and weld over X, and I'm going to duplicate. W still up. I'm going to, or with the transform tool still up, hold down Shift and drag on this outer ring, and that will snap to I think 15-degree increments by default. I know I haven't messed with the increments there. So we'll do one there at 90, and then we'll duplicate, or actually we'll go up to our original bolts and come down to merge, merge down, okay. Take these bolts and duplicate again, hold down shift, rotate. Let's do, yeah, 45. Just to keep things simple. Nice and simple. Q. Turn to the ZModeler brush. Grab bolts again. And I'm going to merge down. Hit OK. Now we have our outer bolts all set. If you ever need to kind of reset, I know the bolt was just a basic cylinder we barely modified, but if you ever need to kind of reset that, reset a little detail like that you've done, go ahead, duplicate. This one won't have, the one that you duplicated won't have history, but the one above it will. So we can just come up here to the history slider or timeline area and just drag all the way back until we have our bolt kind of sitting in one spot and modified the way we wanted it, which was about that size with the geometry. We previewed, it was all good. There we go. Okay. So with that, hit W, and then don't hold Alt and just tap this home button, and it will send this back to the world center. Now we'll do this inner. We'll do our inner bolts the same exact way. So, you know what? I'm going to duplicate this just so one of them has a history. Turn that off, and drag this out to one side, about where you want it. Obviously, where you want it. I guess these ones don't need to stick out so much, but about there, sure. Hit D, Q, come back to ZModeler, and then Control 1, which is my quick menu. But if you need to, if you don't have my quick menu, come down here to Geometry, Modify Topology, Mirror and Weld over X. So we have our bolts there, same exact process, duplicate and rotate. Duplicate. Rotate to 90. Cool. And merge down. Okay. No. That's alright. Whenever you're merging, always look at what you're merging to. These are pro tips. Control 1. Don't delete hidden, split hidden. Come back to this. Make sure these inner bolts are matched up, and then you go, yeah, this one to this one. Merge down, okay. And then duplicate. Tap W, hold down Shift, drag to 45, and we're good. There we go. And now merge down one more time, and we have our inner bolts. Inner bolts. So D. Go through and just make sure all of your parts are on dynamic there. Just so you're getting the high res preview. Let's turn our handle back on too. One last thing. Duplicate. Get off the bolts. Come over here. Same process. Actually, this would be a good chance to show off the insert mesh. So, we have duplicated off a bolt. Look at us. We've done it. Amazing. We have the geometry laid out the way that we want. We're going to orient the bolt the way you want it to appear when you drag out your insert mesh brush. So I want it to drag out this way towards the camera, so I can go onto a flat surface and just drag it once and then be done with it. So there we go. With that oriented the way that we want it to, come over here to the brush menu or the brush palette rather. You can find that up here at, at the top. Drag that over wherever you want. Come down to create insert mesh, and then new. That will create a new insert mesh brush from the mesh that, or from the subtool that you have highlighted. So that is super handy. Now unsolo this, turn this one off, come back to your handle, let's flip around, Shift F. Now it doesn't matter what size your brush is, I just compulsively resize my brush. You'll notice that the insert mesh will kind of snap to vertices. D, Shift F. Let's do Shift D again. It'll kind of snap to vertices, which is super nice. So I actually want it, I kind of want it here. So let's go back to our insert edge loop on our ZModeler. We do have symmetry on, so that's great. Put that right there. And then come back over to your brush palette, grab your new insert mesh brush, and then drag that out on the handle. So that's not quite dragging out the way that we wanted it to. We want it embedded, through the shield. So in order to do that, come over here to depth in your brush palette. You'll see the embed slider is at 100. I'm going to turn the embed to 0. I'm going to drag it out one more time. And you'll see it'll mask off the handle. Go to my custom menu, go to split mask points. So now this bolt is a new subtool. Then I'm just going to drag it down so it's where I want it. There. Now we have our bolts. So have pretty much all of our parts in. Look at us go. So now we are on the home stretch, so all I want to do is go through here and bevel these edges so that they catch a little bit of light. They're a little sharp here, so a couple different ways we can do that, but if we're using ZModeler, go BZM, Shift F, and then Shift D. I'm going to come over to transform, activate symmetry over X and Y. I'm going to hover over an edge. I'm going to go to bevel, edge loop complete, and then kind of reposition so I can see this a little better, and just give it a little bit of a bevel there. And then we're going to do this for the inside as well. And hit D again, Shift F, preview. That's looking like we need it to. So we do that for the inside of this one. We don't need to do it for the outside, but a handy little trick. If you just tap after doing your bevels and getting a width that you like on one edge or subtool, activate your symmetry again. When you come to another subtool, you can just tap, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, you just tap and you'll get a bevel of the exact same width. So on this one it's a little weird because there isn't any kind of supporting geometry here, so I think I'll just insert another edge loop there, just a couple control loops there, and then when we go tap, nope, then when we go bevel, edge loop complete, tap, it will insert a bevel that's the same width as the one on the outside of the shield. So hit D again, Shift F, check it out, looks fine. Come over here, turn on dynamic subdiv, and then we're just going to click apply, and then do the same operation here, the bevel edge loop complete. Just tap once. You don't even need to do this edge, but tap it anyway. Shift F, unframe it, and unsolo. There you go. Shield, low res mesh, ready. I'm actually not gonna bevel that one. Bring that down just a bit, bring these in just a bit. Okay, so that's pretty much how you go about making a low res shield model using ZModeler in ZBrush. Hope this was useful. I hope I made any kind of sense. Let me know if this was helpful to you.